how many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Start or Sit QB's Week 10 edition. This is 14P Fantasy, and I am your host, Justin Wright. We got 5 names here. We got 3 starts, 2 sits. But before we get into that, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, guys. If you're watching us consistently or seeing us for the first time, think about subscribing, getting those notifications for when things are dropping throughout the week. Also, go ahead, follow me over on Twitter at Justin_14P. If you're looking to, get comments answered almost immediately, shoot me a DM, tweet at me, whatever. I'm always on there answering things when I can. All right, let's get into it. We got 5 names here, and number 1 on the list is Kirk Cousins versus the Los Angeles Chargers. And before you really get into even like the narrative or the stats behind this, the narrative of Kirk Cousins just, not being great against very difficult defenses has legs to it. I mean, we've seen it for his entire career. This is one of those moments, while it may not be a primetime game, you just know I don't anticipate Kirk Cousins being up to the challenge. The Chargers defense has, especially against the pass, has been phenomenal. And the numbers show it. Again, over the last month, they're allowing 13 points a game to fantasy quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins doesn't have the rushing to kind of circumvent that, so he needs to have a big day through the air, and that's just not how you attack the Chargers. And again, so the Chargers have only played 3 games in the last month. Teams have still run against them 90 times, which is good for 5th in the NFL. When you want to beat the Chargers, you run. You run. And luckily for them, they have Dalvin Cook, they have Alexander Madison. So they have the team to, the recipe to beat the Chargers. And again, it's going to be rushing. So expect a bigger day from Dalvin Cook. And like, I'm not ever going to play Madison when Cook is healthy, but I do think Madison has a productive day on the ground. So it's just, I don't think it lines up well for Kirk Cousins. Game script, narrative, all of it is kind of working against him here. So I do think he lands well outside the top 12 QBs in week 10. Number 2 on our list is Carson Wentz versus Jacksonville. And Carson Wentz has been on a tear. 6 straight weeks now. He has double-digit touchdowns. Obviously a great performance last week in prime time. And now he gets Jacksonville. And yes, we just saw Jacksonville stifle the Buffalo Bills. Do you really anticipate that again for another week? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's Jacksonville. Even when they allowed 9 points to Josh Allen, basically a throwaway week as far as the defense goes when it comes to, how many points they allow against the QB. They're still the 21st most difficult matchup over the last month, which means the other 3 weeks, QBs have been performing very, very well against Jacksonville. So Carson Wentz looks to be in a spot to, potentially be a top 10 QB. He has been picking apart defenses. Him and Michael Pittman, that connection has emerged. It's very similar to Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey a few years back. Carson Wentz, you may not like the name, you may not like the player. Only 2 interceptions over his last 6 games. He's playing like a top 10 fantasy QB again. If you got him, you should be starting him, as long as you don't have, one of the elite 5 or 6 QBs that are every week starters. All righty. This one sucks because I love Mike White. He's a fun-ass story. He seems like a good dude. But to kind of counteract all the hype that is Mike White, you can't play him against Buffalo. I think most people know that, but I think it's still important to say out loud. As fun as he is, as good of a story as Mike White is, Buffalo is allowing, what's the damn number? 11.5 points over the last month for quarterbacks. He's basically turned him into, Damian Harrison when he doesn't score a touchdown. That's what you're looking at. So Mike White, great story. Pretty good player, actually. But you can't play him against Buffalo. Just don't do it. I think you know that, but it had to be said. All right, number 4. We got Matt Ryan versus Dallas. And I get hesitation with Matt Ryan. He is on the fringe. He's 12, 13 in that range. Obviously some leagues, people are carrying 2 QBs. So Matt Ryan may be one of the best starting options on waivers. And I think that's fine, especially against Dallas. They've kind of found their legs last week without Calvin Ridley. Again, I had him as a sit last week, not expecting them to figure it out. And they did. Again, he threw for 300 yards. He threw for 2 touchdowns. Him and Kyle Pitts, him and Russell Gage, him and Cordero Patterson have just been, they were very, very good last week. And I expect that to continue, especially against Dallas, who's now missing Randy Gregory. So that's really going to affect how much pressure they can get on Matt Ryan. And if you give him a clean pocket, we've seen it his entire career, he can pick you apart. Again, double-digit touchdowns, 6 of his last 7 games. They just found a groove. Matt Ryan got his groove back, it seems. So go ahead, fire Matt Ryan up as a back-end top 12 option in Week 10. And we got one more guy here, Derek Carr versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And you could just say it's the Kansas City Chiefs and the video, you'll start Derek Carr. But without Gruden in this offense, this team seems to kind of be figuring it out a little bit. Obviously, last week they had the Henry Ruggs distraction, and that was obvious in the offense. But Derek Carr still threw for 296 yards. They have another week of Deshaun Jackson getting familiar with this team, filling that Henry Ruggs role. Derek Carr has been shockingly effective. Again, he has thrown for 300 yards in 5 games this year. And another one of those, he threw for 296, again, which was in Week 9. So they didn't really miss Henry Ruggs from a yardage standpoint. Again, they just didn't find the end zone. And I do think, obviously, against Kansas City, you can do that. Remember last year, the Raiders were one of the only teams to really kind of beat Kansas City and take it to them in the regular season. This weird divisional matchup they have, the Raiders always show up. So I'm going to bank on Derek Carr. Again, he's in the exact same tier as Matt Ryan. And I want Carson Wentz over both these guys, but Derek Carr does have the makings, of a back-end top 12 QB in Week 10. All right, guys, that is all we have. If you got questions, drop them below, streaming questions, trade questions, whatever it might be. Let us hear it. Again, if you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Catch me over on Twitter. Handle and all that information is there at the bottom. All right, guys, that is all we have. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.